As always, this podcast is brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star. Pre-order the book now from Bookstation and be in with a chance to win a family pass to the Croke Park Museum. The new book comes out on April 21st. If you're looking to pick up any presents for any nieces or nephews in the coming weeks and months, then why not check out Declan Kirby GAA Star, best children's GAA book on the market at the minute, as voted by Amazon and Easons. It's available on all good bookshops, Amazon, Easons, absolutely everywhere. So get yourself a copy. The new book comes out on April 21st, Declan Kirby GAA Star, European Dreams. Check it out now in the description down below, and let's start the stream. Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. It was a crazy weekend of action in both hurling and football, and I'm delighted to be joined here by Seamus Brady of the On GAA Podcast to run through all the weekend's action. We're going to be running through the hurling weekend's action, of course, obviously the big wins in there for the likes of Limerick and Waterford, and of course we'll be discussing some of the football games towards the end of the podcast as well. Suppose first of all, Seamus, how's life with yourself? You're keeping well?
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me on again. Life is good. A bit mad that we're talking about the first round of GAA fixtures on the same weekend as Easter Sunday, but that's the world we're living in now. But I thought it was a very interesting start to both the hurling championship and the football championship. I think the results went mainly the way that we kind of thought that they would, but not in the way, do you know what I mean? Like the methods of getting there. Like Tyrone did beat Fermanagh, but it wasn't as convincing as we kind of thought it could be. Same with Limerick and, not Limerick. Same with Waterford and Tipp. Thought maybe it'd be more of a statement there. But all in all, yeah, great that the championship's back so early.
Yeah, and I was thinking as well, like, would you nearly prefer having the championship in summer in the usual kind of routine, or would you nearly prefer it the way it is now? Because I know it definitely does seem to have mixed reaction, mixed opinions. Like it is a strange one, all right, because it's almost like normally with the league you'd have a couple of weeks, maybe even a month to digest it. It still doesn't even feel like the championship's even started. It's a little strange, to be honest. I don't know if it's because maybe the weather was a bit crap over the weekend as well. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a weird one. I think there's a part of me that prefers. I was having this debate with Matt Hurley, the GAA Statsman. He came on to play on GAA, and we were chatting about it, and we were saying that should there be, and I'd be interested to know what you think about this, should there be like an opening day type thing? You know how the Premier League does, like the day where it all kicks off, but as best it can, like one weekend where it all begins. You know how sometimes the championship, it starts slowly, like, you know, New York will play Sligo, and then the next week the Munster championship starts, then the next week the Leinster championship starts. Like, I'd love if in May there was a weekend where the football championship just kicked off. Every province got going. And then a similar weekend for the hurling, so that it would be one to really mark down on the calendar and have as like, that's the day where the hurling championship kicks off. That's the day where the football kicks off. I think it would be a very marketable day for the GAA as well, rather than a real filtered way of starting the championship. I'd prefer May to August, little bit of time in between, I think, because then you can really build up anticipation. You can do more analysis. You can do more kind of in-depth previews, because it seemed to almost catch everyone by surprise. It's like, oh, it's starting this weekend, guys, like serious, because it felt like the league never really ended and all of a sudden we were right back in the championship. It was strange.
Yeah, it was like a 2-week break or something. It was definitely a little bit odd. Like, I suppose it is good in some ways that the games are a bit more spread out, because you do have, you know, say, for example, obviously there was a lot of attention on Fermanagh Tyrone this weekend, a lot of attention on London Leitrim, New York Sligo was on GAA Go, and obviously next week you've got some of the Leinster sides in action. So I suppose that is the main positive, and I suppose from a hurling perspective as well, you've seen even some of the Antrim Offaly got shown on the Sunday game. I think that must be the first ever Joe McDonagh Cup game that was ever shown on the Sunday game. So at least like there is still, like, a lot of these games are still getting a bit more attention, which I suppose is good.
Yeah, I mean, that is the positive. It's which would you rather have? Would you rather have like a day of days where it all kicks off, but then probably it's more focused on just the big teams, or would you rather have a day for each team to get a bit more exposure? And I can definitely see why they are doing it this way. I just feel like with this way of doing it for these players, like for the likes of Sligo, Leitrim that played this weekend, I feel like it gives them less time to really recover and get ready from the league, because they would have taken the league campaign very seriously. It wouldn't have been a Cavan types thing where they could have tiptoed through. Like, Sligo were pushing for promotion the whole way through, and then going over to New York, like, they didn't really get any time to rest. So their league and championship is just one big championship for them, I think. And yeah, I think it would probably have done them better to get a little bit of a rest, I think.
Yeah, I suppose we'll crack on with some of the hurling action then and run through some of these games. You had Cork 117, Limerick 225. I think a lot of people were still expecting Limerick to come through this game, even though they had a poor enough league campaign. But I mean, this was very, very dominant indeed. I mean, the first half was kind of even, like Cork started a bit better, 1-2 without reply in the opening 7 minutes. But in the second half, once Limerick got going, I mean, they just absolutely steamrolled Cork, really. And Cork just didn't have an answer for Limerick, and not for the first time either.
Yeah, no, I was very disappointed by this game. I mean, it's the fact that it started so well. I mean, Shane Kingston got that goal within 20 seconds. It was like, wow, like it's already happening. Cork are getting Limerick. There was rumours about, what is up with Limerick? Have they left it? Like me and Matt were comparing it to, a college student or a Leaving Cert student waiting until the day before their exam before deciding to study everything. Like Limerick were stuffing all these players back into the team just before the championship begins. We were thinking, I was saying, look, if there was ever a chance really to catch Limerick on the hop, it might be this game. And when Cork got that goal straight away, I was like, wow, like maybe this could actually be Cork's revenge, because obviously they beat them in the league. But I still think there's something in the head about what Limerick did to them in the last year's All-Ireland final. Like there's something in the head, because when Limerick got going, as you're saying, like Cork just had no response. And Limerick, again, they just never cease to amaze us. I mean, like Cian Lynch's point when he's on his knees, like Diarmaid Byrnes literally looked at any point like he could hit the ball over from literally anywhere on the pitch. Kyle Hayes' goal, I mean, flashbacks to the goal against Tipperary last season. They were just fantastic. Again, Gerard Hegarty, Cian Lynch, Tom Morrissey, they dropped deep into the kind of midfield half-back line area for all of Cork's puckouts, and they just cleaned up. And then when Cork tried to do it different and tried to kind of play out through the hands like they do with Patrick Collins' puckouts, Limerick's press was just fantastic. And they look right back to their best. I mean, very similar to the type of thing that I was saying about now with Limerick, it's like pick your poison. Right? You want to go with the long puck out? Okay, Hegarty and Lynch, they're dropping deep. They're just going to sweep up everything as soon as you hit the ball into them. Okay, you want to play it short? Gillan, Flanagan, like the press is on immediately. And how many times did they turn over Cork? And not only turn them over, but turn them over and punish them. You think about Aaron Gillan's goal. You think about Garrett Hegarty's points. Like they made them pay for those mistakes. And yeah, they just looked awesome again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned there as well about the fact that Limerick were trying to get a lot of players into their team sort of at the end of the league. And I was the same as you. I felt like this was a fantastic chance for Cork to beat Limerick on the opening day, to set out a marker at Páirc Uí Chaoimh in front of their home fans. You could see by watching this game as well, like the fans were really on Limerick's back at times as well. Like every miss, every poor pass was jeered. They were under pressure. And, I still think that Limerick still can even improve. I don't even think they were actually at their absolute best. I still think they have an extra probably 20 to 30% to give. So you would look back at Cork as well. And it's one thing getting beat by Limerick, but to be absolutely hammered in the way that they were was just really poor. Like I think from the 37th minute onwards, only 1 point from play, which is very disappointing.
That's shocking. Like that's shocking for a game of hurling. Like you can't justify that. I mean, like with the forwards that they have, with Lehan, with Horgan, with Seamus Hannity, I mean, you can't justify that. I think one moment that is being slept on a little bit is Nicky Quaid's save from Shane Barrett. I mean, Seamus Hannity, Cork started the second half pretty well. And then Seamus Hannity gets that ball out on the wing, sprays it across to Shane Barrett. He does well to get the shot away because it was nearly a block put on him. And what a save by Nicky Quaid. Knocks it up and over the bar. And I think Cork, because of the damage psychologically that is done to them by Limerick, by those heavy defeats, they need momentum. They need confidence. And when things happen that kind of suggest that it might not be their day, I feel like they do fold against Limerick pretty quickly, as was seen in this game. I mean, 1 point from play after the 37th minute or something, that's ridiculous. Like, and you're not going to win an All-Ireland like that. You're just not. So I don't know where Kieran Kingston is going to think about this now. They're not playing next week. They have a round off. They have time to rest. Limerick go and play Waterford, which is a mouth-watering clash. But for Cork, I mean, the only way is up from this game. They were shocking, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you were speaking of Matthew there. He's left a comment in here saying, looks like I was right about Horgan after all. No movement in the forward line. Wonder why. Only a player going for the all-time scoring record. No, not feasible going forward. And yeah, it's a fair point as well. And obviously, we've seen you were mentioning there, like about the psychological damage that seems to be getting done to Cork, and they were hammered obviously by Waterford as well. In that league final. But speaking of Limerick, though, I mean, I suppose this really does prove that, you did have a couple of different people speaking out saying, Limerick might not make the top three, or, they're not at their absolute best. But I think this very much proves that they are still the top dogs at the moment in the country anyways. And, maybe they could get beat by Waterford next weekend, but I think a result like this, even with them not at their absolute best, just proves they very much are ahead of the chasing pack at the minute anyways.
Yeah, well, whoever said Limerick aren't going to finish in the top three in Munster is just talking absolute nonsense. Like, of course they're going to finish in the top three. Like, they put on one of the best All-Ireland performances I've ever seen. Like, that the fact that they're getting compared to the Kilkenny 4-in-a-row team after that All-Ireland final just shows how good they were. The fact that we're sitting here saying they beat Cork by 225 to 117, not letting Cork score a point from play after the 37th minute. And you can actually still sit there and say, it wasn't the best performance. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's great. That shows how good they are. That shows the level of talent that they have. The fact that someone like Pat Ryan can come on and just swing a point over the bar from literally the sideline, and he's not good enough to get in. Like, the fact that they are without the likes of Peter Casey, like Mike Casey comes back in, having not really been in the team for, a year, a little bit more than a year, and he looked awesome. He looked like he'd been playing the entire time. Their talent level is ridiculous, and I think they are absolutely the team to beat. If Waterford beat them this year, I think they'll only beat them once. I think Limerick are just too strong, but it will be interesting to see when Waterford beat them. Will they beat them in the preliminary? Will they beat them in the Munster final? Because I think that will be the Munster final. Or will they beat them in the All-Ireland semi-final or All-Ireland final? Because Limerick, you have to beat Limerick to win the All-Ireland. It's that simple. Like, they are right up there in terms of dominance with, like, the Dublin 6-in-a-row team, with the Kerry teams of the 2000s. Like, they are the kings. And this performance was a real, like, in my opinion, like, did you forget how good we were type performance, like Kerry against Dublin in 2009, like, where it was a real tour de force. Like, they just put Cork away. And for Cork, this performance is, like, so depressing, like, because it's the second time now in 6-7 months that they've just got absolutely battered by the same team. And I was saying it with Matt as well, like, because he makes a good point about starting Horgan and basing the attack around him. Like, you're doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. Like, you're putting Horgan in there, who's a big full forward, and then you're trying to spray the ball into him. I said, why not put a Conor Lehan, a Shane Kingston at full forward, and let's test their pace in there. Let's see how quick that full back line is. Because playing a Patrick Horgan in there, you've seen in last year's final it didn't work. So why would you go and do the same thing again? Limerick haven't really been. That's why Waterford are the team that everyone's looking at as potentially being able to beat them, because they got the likes of Desi Hutchinson in there, got the likes of Jack Prendergast in there, who are lightning quick. And that might just be the key to getting past Limerick. And Cork have that pace, though. Cork have Jack O'Connor. They have Shane Kingston. They have Alan Connolly. They have Conor Lehan. So that's why are they not going with that? It didn't make sense to me. It made perfect sense to me what Matt was saying about Horgan not getting the start, as controversial as it is, because when they put Horgan in there, then they seem to completely rely on him. So it's the type of thing where I think without him, as good as he is, because I do still think he's a brilliant player, I think Cork would have a better chance of beating Limerick if they based it solely on the pace.
Yeah, no, like, and you've seen even with Shane Kingston as well with the goal early on, and he loves a goal against Limerick. Like, he got one in the All-Ireland final. I think he got one in the league as well. And he's probably been Cork's best player so far this year. So yeah, it's a strange one, all right. And you seen with Darragh Fitzgibbon probably not having as big an impact in this game as he probably did throughout the league as well. And Limerick very much an autopilot a lot of the times in the second half, like you were saying. Like, I think they could have probably upped it by 10 to 15% and maybe gone for more goals and been a bit more ruthless. But as you were saying as well, like, they obviously don't have Peter Casey. They don't have Shamie Flanagan either. Cathal O'Neill's coming off the bench and scoring an absolute wonder point as well. So, like you could argue the case that they're actually nearly better than what they were last year. And you looked at them last year and you thought it can't get much better than that. But if they continue these levels of performances and they improve a little bit as well, which I expect they will, then they might even eclipse what they done last year.
Yeah, and just one more point onto that. When they did the analysis on the Sunday game, it got frightening because that type of total hurling approach that they're getting now. Now the likes of Barry Nash, Dan Morrissey, they're starting to attack. Like, remember I was mentioning earlier about Hegarty and Lynch. Like, I noticed that Hegarty and Lynch were dropping real deep to help with O'Donoghue, and O'Donovan are in the middle. But Barry Nash was, overlapping. Dan Morrissey was overlapping. So now defenders are attacking and forwards are defending. Everyone can play everywhere. They moved Dan Morrissey out to the half-back line again, and it's like he never left it. Like, they're all comfortable playing in every position. They're all just machines. They can fit into any area on the pitch. And that's the best point that I was saying about Limerick. Very similar, because I compare them a lot to that Dublin team under Jim Gavin, is they keep evolving. They won the All-Ireland, and they won the All-Ireland in 2018 with Kyle Hayes at centre forward. Then the new weapon that they added was Kyle Hayes at wing back. And now you're thinking, well, how can it get better than that? Now they're bringing in this like total hurling side where the likes of Barry Nash now are running forward. And Barry Nash was a forward in his day. So if he gets a chance to shoot at the posts, he's not going to miss. And that's, again, they're evolving. Again, they're bringing in the likes of Cathal O'Neill. And very similar to how Dublin did it under Jim Gavin. Every year there was a new player into the team. There was a Brian Howard. There was a Paul Mannion coming back. There was something new in the team that every year you had to plan for, which makes it so hard to catch up with Limerick because they're not a standing target.
Yeah, and it is interesting, all right, because you said there as well, like, sure, even Cian Lynch at one stage, he was playing around midfield and he's in the half-forward line. Kyle Hayes was in the half-forward line, then gets moved back to wing-back. I mean, they're just interchanging their players all the time, and I think it definitely shows the work that John Coyley and Paul Kinnerk have done over the last couple of years. In terms of wrapping up on Cork, then, do you still think they can make the top three, or what do you reckon? Because obviously, they're not playing any more games with Páirc Uí Chaoimh, at least in the Munster Championship anyways. So, I mean, it could be very tough for them to get out. Like, they have to go away to Waterford, away to Tipperary. They play Clare, a neutral venue as well. Like, you'd be worried for the Rebels, really.
Yeah, and like the other thing as well is that they looked so vulnerable at the back. I mean, you talk about the 2 goals that they conceded. I know the second one will make a little bit of an exception for the second goal, because the fact that they got turned over, Galan had hung in the right place at the right time. But it was still poor that he ended up there. But then the first goal for Kyle Hayes is just shocking defending. I mean, he turns, it was highlighted, Mark Coleman just absolutely caught ball watch and just ran out to the sideline to double team Kyle Hayes. And with one sidestep, the Cork defender slips and Kyle Hayes has a straight run at the goal. There's 3 Cork defenders that are like positioned in between, marking their men, between Hayes and the goal, and none of them come to cut him off. And then there's the cornerback, I think it was Sean O'Donoghue or something, who's marking Galan. But literally, if you watch the replay, O'Donoghue just stands there and just watches Kyle Hayes. Literally just watches him put the ball in the net. Doesn't try block him, doesn't try anything. He's too focused on Galan to go to Kyle Hayes. When at that point, Kyle Hayes is that close that he's obviously going to shoot. He's not going to hand pass at that stage. And it would be too hard to get off an accurate enough hand pass at that stage. So Donoghue needs to commit when Kyle Hayes looks like he's throwing it up to bat it. Then you need to jump in and block. And he doesn't do anything. So I think for Cork, they just need to sharpen up, tighten up at the back, because they are going to go in. Like Waterford, what are that Waterford forward line going to do to that Cork defence if they keep going like that? Clare's forward line is brilliant. You've got Tony Kelly, Aaron Shanahan. What are they going to do to that Cork back line? Tipp, the former Noel McGrath there against Waterford, Jason Ford. Like, there's no bad forward lines in Munster. So if Cork don't tighten up at the back, they'll be in serious trouble, because Waterford and Limerick take the 2 top spots, no doubt, in my opinion. And Cork, then between Cork, Clare and Tipp for the 3rd spot. If Cork don't tighten up at the back, they would have been my pick at the start to go into that 3rd spot. But, Clare and Tipp just have such talent that if Cork aren't right, they won't get in.
Yeah, I backed Clare to sneak in front of them, really, but I felt like that was a bold prediction at the time, whereas now I'm kind of looking at it and thinking Cork might even finish bottom, to be honest, because, like you were saying there about them not tightening up, and, we've seen it in the All-Ireland final last year against Waterford, even against Kilkenny at times as well in that league semi-final. So really, really a lot of work for Cork to do in the coming weeks. Waterford, as we were mentioning there, big win for them over Tipperary, 224-220. Waterford, I mean, they struggled in the first half. I thought Tipperary done very well defensively. Cathal Barrett and James Quigley done very well there at the back. But once Waterford got going really in that third quarter, I think they hit 1-6 or 1-7 without reply. They were dominant really. And although Tipperary made a game of it towards the closing minutes, Waterford are the ones who get the win.
Yeah, this is a brilliant game. This is a fantastic game, and it was exactly what Waterford needed. I mean, we were saying it was a chance to make a statement for Waterford to put away a Tipperary side that recently have lost the likes of Paddy Ma, and they're obviously without Seamus Callanan as well, who's injured. So it was a chance there to really make a statement for Waterford, but they got an absolute epic game. They got such a challenge off Tipperary that they needed, and that will harden them up for the championship. I'd be absolutely thrilled if I was Liam Cahill, because they made such a brilliant start. I mean, Patrick Curran pointed within 14 seconds. Then Jack Prendergast gets that point on the 5th minute that makes it 4-0. And then at that point, you're thinking, all right, Waterford are going to put a bit of a beating here on Tipperary if things don't change. And then Tip completely changed with the Mark Keogh goal and then a Jake Morris point on 8.5 minutes, and then Tip are ahead. So right from that point on, it was such a competitive game. And I thought some of the scores are absolutely fantastic, but you are right. At halftime, I thought the key point was when Austin Gleeson and Jamie Barron both came in. I thought they absolutely changed the game. Gleeson's point right on the start of the second half was just an inspirational score. And that little burst that Waterford made at the start of the second half, like I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the dressing room and know what Liam Cahill said to them at halftime, because that Michael Kiley goal on the volley straight after, that was a brilliant team move. I mean, Jack Prendergast was involved in that. Patrick Curran was involved in that. Throws it over to Michael Kiley. Bang. And yeah, that was, I think, the winning of the game for Waterford. That little burst and then the impact of Gleeson and Barron.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big turnaround really going into the second half. Like, and you were saying there with Waterford, like, and in particular about Liam Cahill, like he'll be happy with the fact that they were such heavily tested, because maybe in the league, like, I know I think they drew a game in the league. Obviously, they didn't win every single game, but largely speaking, throughout the majority of the league, they were fairly comfortable in a lot of their games, and they were fairly dominant. And we've seen this before, even in football, with teams like Kerry and even Dublin sometimes, where, if you're not tested, if you don't get those big tests, you don't find out much about yourself. And for Waterford, they would have found out a lot about themselves in this game. They would have found out that, right, these are the men that we need to be starting in terms of Austin Gleeson, Jamie Barron. We need these lads on the pitch, and that some of these players, the likes of Desi Hutchinson, whatnot, quiet in the first half, but have what it takes to step it up in the second half. So for Waterford and for Liam Cahill, like, they'd be very happy with that sort of test of character, and it might stand to them a bit maybe against the Limerick in a decisive Munster final or All-Ireland final. If they do go behind by 3-4 points, although you're playing a completely different team, it could stand to them having had this sort of moment where they've came from behind and turned something around.
Yeah, without doubt, because you mentioned there about Desi. I mean, Desi Hutchinson, we've all known, is the type of player that can be so quiet throughout the entire game, and then he gets one chance and he'll bury it. And he buried that goal. I mean, on the 44th minute, he just gets it. I don't know what happened in the Tipperary backs that allowed Desi Hutchinson, of all people, to be standing on the edge of the penalty area with no one on him. But what a finish that was, right into the top corner. No chance for Hogan in the nets. And yeah, I think the only issue for Waterford is the fact that Tipperary did have other goal chances. I mean, you think about the Jason Ford goal chance, what a save that was by Sean O'Brien. But yeah, like you think about the Mark Keogh, the second goal that he got, I thought that was a bit of a soft one for Waterford to concede. The first goal that they conceded as well, I mean, Conor Prunty was turned over poorly enough there. So again, a defence thing. You saw what Limerick did to the Cork defence. Waterford need to be tight. I mean, Ty de Burke, it was his first championship game back. I thought he had a good game, but in the first half, he was showing signs that he was a bit nervous. I mean, he threw a hand pass straight to Noel McGrath, who put it straight between the posts, who, by the way, while we're on that, like, Noel McGrath was fantastic. I mean, I thought he rolled back the ears. There was real tour de force by him, and at centre forward looked as good as he ever has. But for Tip, on the other hand, I think it's a very, very good, promising game from them because they've always struggled with this getting the young lads into the side. Like Mark Keogh was the heartbeat of that attack in this game, along with Noel McGrath. Thought Jake Morris looked good in stages as well. Then at the back, obviously, you're mentioning there, Quigley in there. I thought he had a good game because obviously first time in so long that they're without Brendan Maher and Paddy Maher. So yeah, I thought good promising signs for Tipp, and for Waterford, I think they can be nothing but happy with how it went, while also keeping in check that, look, if Mark Keogh is going to get 2 goals against you, as good a hurler as he is, he's not as good as Aaron Gillan. So I feel like they're going to need to tighten up as well.
Yeah, Vince says here, great to see Limerick and Waterford at the top tables now. Galway too, great to see the Cats rubbish with Cody gone. At least in Mayo, we give Hurling a go. Kilkenny are now wrap at both. Yeah, I'm not too sure what he means in regards to Cody. I'm pretty sure maybe he means own Cody or something. I have no idea, to be honest, there what you're saying, man. But in terms of Tipperary, though, we were talking about them, and obviously the young lads that they were bringing through. In the likes of Mark Keogh, and you've obviously Connor Bowe come in there as well. Like, I mean, for Tipperary, they'll take a lot of confidence because I think a lot of people probably had Tipperary as maybe the side that would finish, probably outside the top 3, let's be honest. And Waterford very much, looked at as, top 2, top 3 in the country. So for Tipperary, like, they'll take a lot of confidence now going into that game next week against Clare. Like, they'll go into that with a lot of momentum. I think they have that one at home as well. So, I mean, they'll be fancying their chances in that one.
Yeah, and I mean, I had Tipp to finish bottom on my thing. I thought that the transition between a side that was fantastic, based around the likes of the Mars and Shay McCallan, I thought, well, that team was fantastic and based a lot on their All-Ireland winning team of 2019. It had been shown that it wasn't good enough to beat Limerick multiple times. So they're in this little weird phase where they have to kind of rebuild the team. And I thought this year might be a year too soon for Colin Bonner and his side to kind of pick up a victory against all the teams in Munster, who I think are a couple of years ahead of them in terms of transition and developing. I thought Cork, Clare, Waterford, they're all just that year or two ahead of a Tipp side that are in their first year of transitioning into this new side, full of the likes of Mark Keogh and Jake Morris. So I thought, but after this performance, I'm much more confident in their abilities to get a victory. I mean, Cork look on the ropes, especially after that game. Like, there will be a bounce from Cork. They will try and prove that they still are one of the top teams in the country. But if Tipp get a run on a Cork, like, you can't lie. Like, the damage is done by the Limerick defeats. And, the defence is there for the taking. I mean, if Jason Ford has a field day, if Noel McGrath does the same thing that he's done, because Mark Coleman will give him space. Like, Mark Coleman will give him space and he'll be able to do the same things again. So, yeah, look, Tipperary will be very confident ahead of their next game because they absolutely showed the potential that they have. I mean, I have it here. Clare they're playing, isn't it? Yeah, I like this. This is a Clare side that I think are very, very unpredictable. I mean, one day Clare can be fantastic and the next day they can be awful. So it's hard. It's genuinely hard to know who's going to win that one. But I do think Tipperary will absolutely be confident. They're never going to be afraid of playing Clare. And obviously in the championship there, I think it was last year. Remember, there was the foul that ended up in the penalty. That was a very interesting game. Tipperary looked like they were the better side in that game, even without the foul. But I think that game showed that Tipperary don't ever really care about Clare, and they usually expect to win that game. So, yeah, you're right. They will have absolutely no fear about Clare. It's just whether or not Clare show up. I think if Clare show up to 100% and Tipp show up to 100%, I think Clare win. But I think it'll be very interesting to see what version of the two sides turn up.
Yeah, like, I do think Clare are a little bit ahead of Tipperary right now, but I think the fact that Tipperary have obviously already played a game in the championship and had that run out against Waterford and had a tough game under their belt, I think it could serve to them a lot more going in against Clare, who maybe haven't had a couple of games obviously in the last couple of weeks. Still waiting obviously for Mark Rogers. Tony Kelly's back now, but will he be 100% at his best? We'll obviously have to wait and see. As for Waterford, though, to finish it up on them, I mean, Limerick obviously coming up next week, obviously at the Gaelic grounds. I mean, that's going to be one hell of a game. And looking at Waterford in particular, I mean, could they challenge Limerick in that game? And obviously, a lot of people would still have Limerick as the favourites, but could Waterford be the ones maybe to maybe turn them over and be the first team to beat them in the All-Ireland since 2019?
Yeah, I think they're the most likely to do it out of any other county in the country. I think Waterford are the most likely to beat Limerick, and I'm not individual in thinking that. I mean, the Sunday game there, nine pundits, 4 of them went for Waterford to win the All Ireland, and the other 5 went for Limerick. So these are the top two sides. It's very much seen as a 2-horse race between these two. Even the likes of Kilkenny, like no one's backing Kilkenny to win the All Ireland this year, which when's the last time that's ever happened? Like it is really between these two sides. Waterford are definitely going to try and, hit Limerick with something different, in my opinion. The likes of Desi Hutchinson. I think they can look at last year's All-Ireland semi-final and look at the fact, remember they put Jamie Barron into the forwards when he wasn't doing well around the middle. And Jamie Barron caused a few problems for them up there when he went up to the forwards. I mean, he brought a few good saves out of Nicky Quaid. I think there's a little window there for Waterford. Like that, Limerick didn't deal that well with just pure pace in the forward line, where Waterford weren't trying to hit high balls in. I think Stephen Bennett maybe around the half forward line would be better than having him in at the full forward line, because I think that's exactly the type of player that a Dan Morrissey would want to mark, or a Sean Finn would want to mark. Sean Finn's going to go on Desi Hutchinson, but like a proper quick, pacey little fella like Jamie Barron could be a nightmare for a big guy like Dan Morrissey. So like, I just think Waterford, the main thing is, can they compete with Limerick around the midfield this time? Because the midfield was where they just got eaten alive in last year's semi-final. Will O'Donoghue and Darragh O'Donovan got man of the match, but Limerick just ate them up in the midfield. And that's why they had to take Jamie Barron out of there, because they just got physically dominated. And this time, obviously, they brought in Cormac Daly, who he is an absolute tank. Like, he can go toe-to-toe with Will O'Donoghue physically, and I don't think he'd be intimidated by him. So I think Cormac Daly and whoever they put with him, be it a Kieran Bennett or be it an Austin Gleeson, that's going to be the absolute foundation. And then on the other hand, how are they going to deal with the likes of Gearóid Hegarty, Tom Morrissey? Is Jack Fagan going to go on Gearóid Hegarty? Like, I just think the matchup around the middle and how Waterford do around the middle this time is going to decide the game, because I think forward for forward and defender for defender, I think Waterford matched them. It's just around the midfield. They just got dominated in last year's semi-final.
Yeah, it will be interesting, all right, because I thought Cormac Daly probably struggled at times, or did struggle at times in the Tipperary game, and you've seen him obviously come off and Jamie Barron come on. So it will be interesting to see how they how they approach that one. But looking at the Leinster Championship, you'd Wexford 119, Galway 119. I suppose the real story is how on earth did Galway not win this game? I mean, they were 2 points up. They had a free, Conor Cooney obviously standing over. It takes far too long on the ball, which I actually thought was very harsh, to be honest. Like, he was standing over the ball like 11 seconds. If that's in Croke Park or anything like that and not at Wexford's home ground, which is where the game was being played, I think he's allowed to take that and probably puts it over, and that's game over. So, but still at the same time, you look at Galway and think there were 6 points up going into the final 5 to 6 minutes. I mean, how on earth did they not win this game?
Yeah, well, to start off, that like the Cooney one is a ridiculous decision, because then only a few minutes later you have Lee Chin standing over the ball for 17 seconds and he's allowed to take as long as he wants. Like, that just didn't make sense. I mean, the referee was hugely influenced by the crowd there. He got that completely wrong. And Galway are absolutely right to be really frustrated with that, because that has cost them a point. Like, that's cost them the 2 points. And that could be everything. I mean, how many times over the last few years in the round robin has it come down to the final day? I mean, the last time the round robin was played, Galway went out on the final day. I mean, if this happens where, Galway go out on score difference or something when they're tied on points with a team, they'll think back to this. They'll think back to this Conor Cooney free, and that they could have come out of Wexford with the 2 points, which would have been a great start for Henry Shefflin in the championship. Yeah, they'll be really frustrated with it. But on the other hand, again, it's very similar to what Galway have done in the last few years. Get really complacent, get really cocky, and throw the game away. I mean, they did it against Kilkenny in the Leinster final in 2020. They looked awesome in the first half, and then they just let the game slip. And getting complacent, again, they have done that. I mean, remember the Dublin game last year when they were going for goals with every shot they took in the first 5 minutes? Like, they just need to keep their heads focused. They just need to keep their head in the game. I think Wexford, fantastic comeback by them, by the way. They were 6 points down. Lee Chin's impact off the bench was huge. Great to see him back. And yeah, like the substitutes definitely made a difference. Cathal Dunbar as well. He was fantastic when he came on. He got a lovely score. And so, yeah, absolute credit to Wexford for bringing themselves back from the dead in some respects. But poor from Galway, because this was definitely a game where like Limerick don't lose this game. Waterford don't lose this game. Once they're 6 points up, the game's over. They're not losing. They're not getting pulled back like Galway did. And I think if Galway want to consider themselves All-Ireland contenders, they need to finish games off where they end up 6 points up at a stage like that.
Yeah, they've one win in the last 6 championship games, Galway, which tells you just tells you how much they've been struggling. A lot of those games have all been very similar, like the 2 games against Dublin, the one in 2019, the one in the last year as well, like where they looked in control and sort of thrown it away. And then like what you were saying against Kilkenny as well, and same here, like seems to be problems that are going from Shane O'Neill over into Henry Shefflin's reign as manager as well. But I suppose from Wexford, like you have to give them credit as well, like a tremendous amount of fight, as you were saying there, with Lee Chin and Cathal Dunbar, who came off the bench, Conor McDonald, who finished with 1-2, and Rory O'Connor with 6 points in total on the game. So, I mean, for Wexford, look, it's a hard one to know where they're at in terms of, can they get into that top 3? I think it's going to be very close between them, Galway, Kilkenny and Dublin. But I mean, they're showing a lot of fight, and they do have Dublin at home coming up now as well. And especially at Wexford Park, like with their home ground, they seem to be one of them teams, like they beat Limerick obviously in the league at home as well. They seem to really get a tune out of their players when they're playing at home.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, they always home comforts, obviously, and then you saw the impact that the crowd had there. I mean, like the crowd get right behind Wexford, and like with Davy Fitz, I mean, especially that was when it was at its peak, but it seemed to carry on into Dara Egan, which says that it literally is the fans. Like the fans are hurling crazy down there. And yeah, obviously now you've got Dublin coming down. Like I'd be nervous for that game. Well, obviously we'll talk about Dublin against Laois, but Dublin didn't look very impressive against Laois. And like going down to Wexford Park now and seeing the fight that Wexford showed. I mean, there was one instant where Gerald McInerney ran down the field and he had about 5 Wexford players running after him, and just the absolute drive, determination, heart, ferocity that they showed. And when they won that free, when they turned them over, you could see like the bounce is there, the fight is there, the hunger is there. From an All-Ireland perspective, I don't think the talent is there to the level of a Waterford or a Limerick. I don't think that they can compete with them. But I think Leinster Championship in 2022, I don't think it's beyond Wexford. I think that they absolutely can go for it because they've drawn with Galway now. I think they could definitely beat Dublin. And then, they're in a position where they could make the Leinster final. And then, it's just a once-off game. Who knows what can happen? So Wexford should definitely be very, very, very positive about this result because they showed a lot of heart, a lot of fight against the Galway side that did look very impressive at the start. I mean, they had a number of goal chances. Conor Whelan obviously had that chance for goal. He put it over the bar. Brian Concannon had that chance for goal. He put it over the bar after he did get the initial goal. So Galway should have had more goals on the board, in my opinion, early on. But the fight that Wexford showed to pull back what looked like a game that was dead and buried, and now with Dublin coming down, I think Wexford should be really, really positive.
Yeah, could Galway be in a bit of trouble though? Maybe at the same time, like they didn't have any scorers at all coming off the bench, and although like they do have a tremendous amount of young players coming through, in Brian Concannon, Evan Nyland, and obviously the likes of Cooney and Cathal Mannion, these lads doing quite well in there. But and to be fair, they do have Dublin and Kilkenny at home, but we've seen with Galway there just is a lot of inconsistency in there. I mean, could they be caught maybe? Could they finish outside the top 3? Once again, we've obviously seen it happen before, and they were knocked out early in Leinster last year, same in 2019. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Galway can absolutely be caught because like it would be stupid at this point to say Galway can't be caught because we said that in 2019 and they got caught. We would have said that in 2021 and Dublin beat them when we weren't really that impressed by Dublin's Allianz League campaign. So like Galway absolutely have the talent. Like they absolutely have the talent. Like Conor Whelan, Brian Concannon, like these guys are fantastic. They just don't seem to be able to consistently do it over the course of 70 minutes. They always seem to have a 10-minute spell where the other team just completely gets the run on them. And Wexford again had it where they pulled them back from 6 points down. So like Yeah, they absolutely could be in trouble because, I mean, like, all they need really is a slip up because Kilkenny will fancy their chances of beating Galway. And then all they need to do is take their eye off the ball against Dublin. And now the fact that they haven't got the victory here, like, yeah, that's why I was saying that that Conor Cooney decision to turn over the free and then the fact that it resulted in a Lee Chin point straight after the free was turned over, like, that could absolutely have key implications on the entire championship.
Yeah, it could as well. And we were mentioning there about Dublin, a very narrow win over Laois as well. Probably not the best performance in the end. They just about got over the line. They nearly threw it away at the end with the late goal conceded, and then obviously the late end the rolling chance as well. I mean, could have nearly lost this game. I suppose there's two ways of looking at it from a Dublin point of view, and obviously you're a Dublin fan as well. You could look at it in the sense of, well, they just about got through. It could be a big win. But at the same time, you could look at the performance, and then you could also look at the fact that, the likes of Galway, Wexford and Kilkenny are likely to put up big scores against Laois, and it could come down to score difference. So, I mean, although it is a victory, I mean, it's a weird one of looking at it. It's probably not great preparation for Wexford away next weekend.
Yeah, no, it's not, because, like, it was the type of thing where I was thinking, like, show me, don't tell me. Like, if Dublin are serious about making progression, this is what we've done in pretty much every championship over the last 2 years. We've beaten Laois just about when we've actually beaten them. I mean, we lost them a couple of years ago. We beaten Laois just about. Then we'll, like, draw with a Wexford or a Galway and then lose the big games and then go out. That's pretty much what's happened. And I can see it happening again this year because we didn't look like we've made progression. I mean, Donald Burke looked fantastic, as he always does. I mean, he's really become the heartbeat of the Dublin side. And at the back, I thought we looked okay, but the two goals we conceded were terrible goals to concede. I mean, the first goal, I mean, it literally just bounces. I think it was either off the crossbar or Sean Brennan's hair. Like, I don't really know, but the fact that then, like, Mark Dowling literally just walked in and batted it in. Like, Brennan needs to be more commanding there. He needs to come out and take that ball, take ball and man if necessary. You need to dominate that little square. And he didn't. And then the second goal, like, I don't even think Enda Rowland hit it that well. He just hit it low and it went into the back of the net when there's like 7 Dublin players on the line. Like, I think that's poor enough from us. So Laois shouldn't have been as close to Dublin as they were in the end. And then the fact that it came down to an Enda Rowland free, and, that, like, Laois could have won that game if that had gone into the back of the net. That's how close this was. So for Dublin, I think, and Matty Kenny didn't look happy at the end. Like, he was standing on the sideline there and he looked more kind of just a little bit annoyed. Like, it's a weird one because, yeah, we've won, but I wouldn't have confidence in this victory that we're going to be able to go down to Wexford Park and get a result, let alone Galway and Kilkenny.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. Like, I mean, I tipped Dublin to get into the top 3 at the start of the year, maybe more so out of hope, but you are looking at it and thinking it's going to be very tough, all right, going away to Wexford next weekend. And as you were saying there, like, outside of Donald Burke, who hit 13 points, just 4 points from Dublin's 6 forwards, and Alex Considine, who came off the bench, ended up with a goal. But you're even looking at the likes of Ronan Hayes, Fergal Whiteley, but in particular Ronan Hayes. Like, we know the talent that he is and how well he done at club level, obviously for Kilmacud Crokes, and how good of a hurler he is, finishing with just 1 point on the day. Now, obviously, I didn't see the game. You only seen the brief highlights, so I don't know whether it was the service into him or what it is, but I just feel like Dublin need to try and find a way to get more out of a player like him, because he's a phenomenal hurler, really. And I feel like if Dublin are going to do anything special, he's going to have to be one of the main men who's going to need to step up.
100%. I mean, he looked like an absolute supreme full forward in that club final against Nafina. He looked fantastic. And not only that, he showed mettle. He showed absolute heart. I mean, you think about the fact that he missed the penalty and then he scored the equalising goal in the last minute to deny Nafina that Dublin championship. But the thing that I don't understand, talking about that game, Sean Curry was by far the best hurler on the pitch that day. I mean, what did he hit? 10 points from play? Like, what does Sean Curry have to do to get into the Dublin team? Like, seriously, he was by far and away the best forward, along with Ronan Hayes and Donald Burke, in that final. Like, what does Sean Curry... And the other thing as well, he's a young lad. He's like 21, 22. There's a lot of time there to develop Sean Curry into a top-class inter-county hurler. He's absolutely shown, the ability to do it. And instead, we're persistent with the likes of Eamon Dillon, who's been in the county panel for years and has been on and off in terms of his form. One day he'll be fantastic, and then the next day he'll get marked out of the game. So, like, don't get me wrong, I think Eamon Dillon is definitely a Dublin standard player, but I don't see why Sean Curry isn't in there. For me, I'd not only have him in the panel, but I'd have him starting. Him, Ronan Hayes and Donald Burke together in the forwards with the likes of Danny Sutcliffe there complimenting them. I don't see why we don't do it, because not only did he show in the club final that he absolutely can be marked by a player like Bill O'Carroll and still score that much off him. So I don't see why, even in a game like against Laois, why he wasn't given a chance to kind of prove himself a little bit. Doesn't make sense to me. Ronan Hayes, on the other hand, absolutely. I mean, he showed in that club final the amount of talent that he has. You should be building the forward line around him because he's a big, powerful full forward. You could give us a serious, heartbeat to that forward line. So, yeah, I don't see why we're not putting him right at the heart of our forwards and giving service to him, because Crokes did and they got the benefits.
Yeah, and it is an interesting one, all right, with Sean Curry. Like, he wasn't even on the bench at all. So, yeah, I'm in the same opinion as you as well. Like, it is a strange one to see him not even in the squad or not even in the starting 15. I suppose you have to give credit to Laois, though, at the same time. Look, listen, they gave a spirited performance, and I suppose they've shown that, it's a weird one with them because they've given a lot of these very good. I know they beat Dublin, obviously, back in 2019, but outside of that, since that, they've had a lot of very good performances against some of the other sort of, I wouldn't class Dublin as a big team, but like against some of the other kind of big teams like Clare and Waterford, like they've given good performances, nearly beaten them at times, like came close to taking scalps and just haven't quite been able to get over the line. But they clearly do have some good players, and PJ Scully and, James Keys and a few other lads, and Stephen Picky-Maher and whatnot. We've seen obviously how well he performed in the All-Ireland Club Senior Hurling Championship. So for Laois, look, they'll take a lot of positives, but again, it's another one of them where they've come so close to taking a scalp, but in the end, they've nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, on top of the players you mentioned, Dan Rowland's one of the best keepers in the country, and then Paddy Purcell as well as one of the best hurlers in the country, full stop. He's brilliant. I thought, PJ Scully's frees throughout the game are fantastic. I thought Mark Dowling looked pretty good. And then you're talking about the likes of Chad Dwyer as well, who've been around the block, and like they're fantastic hurlers. The King brothers as well, the Dunphys. Like, Laois do have some serious talent there. And it's no wonder that when Dublin have been on the hop, Laois caught them. So, like, they do have the talent there. They really need that breakthrough victory, though. And the one against Dublin kind of looked like it could be it. And then obviously everything happened with Eddie Brennan. He left, and now they're in that rebuild phase again. So I think they really need like a breakthrough victory. They need a victory over a Dublin or a Clare or a Wexford or a team that they can maybe catch on the hop one day to really kind of announce themselves, because they've been banging on the door. You're right. They've been banging on the door for a few years now, ever since that Dublin victory.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose speaking of Kilkenny, we were chatting about them there just a little bit briefly there earlier. Very, very comprehensive win away to Westmeath in the end. I suppose expected really here. I think a lot of people would have looked at Kilkenny to win this one quite comfortably. Good scoreline for Westmeath to rack up at the same time, 119. But Kilkenny, very much the favourites, I think, in most people's eyes for Leinster, and starting obviously with a big win.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Westmeath started this game actually really well. I mean, it was 6 points each. The likes of Killian Doyle were absolutely fantastic right from the start. And then obviously Niall O'Brien as well. He hit some nice scores. And Westmeath, they were 10 points to 6 up. And then Michael Carey got that cracking goal. But still, Westmeath, for large portions of the game, responded to Kilkenny points. They were, 3 points behind them. I mean, it was like 112 to 12 points, then 113 to 13 points. They were responding to every score that Kilkenny were getting and staying just 3 points behind. And then the red card happened. Cormac Boyle was sent off for a pull, the second yellow card, and then they just collapsed. I mean, goals, James Maher, Walter Walsh, TJ Reid, they really just fell apart there at the end. I think, the Owen McCabe goal at the end was a nice consolation for them. I actually thought, even though he conceded 5 goals, I thought Conor Bracken, the goalkeeper, I thought he looked pretty good. I mean, he made a great save from Walter Walsh just before Billy Ryan put it in the back of the net. But the collapse at the end will be a little bit concerning for Westmeath. I mean, to go from a position where you're right there competitive and then you lose one player and then all of a sudden you concede 4 goals, like it is a bit concerning for Westmeath. But you have to take heart from the performance up until then. I mean, Killian Doyle was running a tour de force there. He looked fantastic. They've got some, they got some fantastic hurlers like the likes of Tommy Doyle. They got Davy Glennon there as well. So look, Westmeath will take some great positives from it, that they did stand up to probably the best team in Leinster. So the fact that they were able to compete with the best team in Leinster for the amount of time that they did, it will give them great confidence that maybe, just maybe they can turn over leash.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, as you were saying there, like you'd look at a scoreline like this and you'd probably say, yeah, that's standard. That's probably expected, really. But I remember following the game on Score BO and I was thinking, really, this was actually quite close. Like, and there really wasn't much between them at all, But then all of a sudden you look back 20 minutes later and Kilkenny have scored 4 goals in the final 20 minutes. And obviously Westmeath have gone down to 14 men. So that definitely did make a huge, huge impact. In terms of Kilkenny, obviously we had a comment there coming in there earlier saying Kilkenny are rubbish or whatever, which I definitely disagree with. I still think they're there or thereabouts. I wouldn't think they're going to win the All-Ireland. You would definitely have to have Waterford and Limerick ahead of them. But with Kilkenny, they just have this way of always kind of, being there or thereabouts. So whereabouts would you have them in the big picture in the All-Ireland?
Yeah, and you were mentioning there about how they always seem to come back, and I don't know how they do that with Brian Cody not in charge anymore.
yeah, he must. I don't know. It must be an imposter or something. Maybe it's a twin, a clone or something.
Yeah, it's not Brian Cody; it's a ghost. But look, I do think you can never write off Kilkenny. I mean, the example that I've given is the 2019 All-Ireland semi-final against Limerick. I mean, no one saw that coming. Like the hype around Limerick was as real back then as it is now. Like everyone was tipping Limerick to go and win the All-Ireland again that year. And Kilkenny just caught them and just taught them a real lesson that day. Like, I mean, I know that there was a Darragh O'Donovan sideline, which definitely did hit the Kilkenny player before going out. And that would have been a 65. And that would have been probably an equaliser. But the fact that Kilkenny were able to run them that close does show that they still have the mettle, because most of that team are still here now. I think that they've drastically improved during the league campaign. I think Pádraig Walsh moving to the half-forward line has been an absolute masterstroke. I think TJ Reid coming back into the side, I mean, he looked pretty sharp when he came on. Billy Ryan looks very, very good. He looks like he's getting better and better. Then, you complement that with the likes of Owen Cody. You complement that with the likes of Paddy Deegan, Cian Kenny in midfield as well as a good addition. I think Kilkenny are very, very strong. So I think, honestly, I would put them in All-Ireland contention, probably as my number 3 team. I would have said number 4, but having seen how poor Cork did against Limerick, I would say that, look, like, I think Kilkenny might actually put ahead, even though Cork did kind of put Kilkenny away in the league semi-final.
Yeah, and just running through some of the results, I suppose, from the Joe McDonagh Cup. You had Kerry 18 points down, 119. Big surprise there in most people's eyes. Meath 17 points, Carlow 430, and Antrim 322, Offaly 224. I suppose any thoughts on them results there? I mean, obviously big win for Antrim. That was very close in the end. Literally went down to the last puck of the ball, and obviously down with a big win away from Kerry, and I suppose showing their progression in hurling over the last couple of years. Of course, they were in the Division 2 league final as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Down hurling is getting better and better. I mean, you think of the Ballycran team that got to the Ulster final and put up a huge test to Slough-Neil that day. I mean, that's a great victory over a Kerry side that, had the likes of Fionn Mackesy and they had the likes of Shane Conway that, they've been in the Joe McDonagh Cup final there a couple of years ago. So Kerry definitely have the pedigree, and the fact that Down beat them, that's a massive scalp for them to claim. And then obviously, it wasn't at home either. So that's a massive step forward for Down. On the other hand, the Antrim Offaly game was a cracker. I mean, 322 to 224, like what a scoreline that is. And some of the performances as well. I mean, Owen Cahill, I thought, was superb for Offaly throughout the game. Then Conor McCann for Antrim, I thought he was brilliant. I mean, Antrim, like the likes of Paddy Burke, I thought he was superb too. Just the goals in the game, all of them were brilliant. And the atmosphere up there, you get this sense that, like, it had a bit of bite in it as well. Like, I mean, you see down at the sideline, I think it was Johnny Kelly and Darren Gleeson were getting into it after one of the goals. Like, you can tell these are the top 2 teams in the Joe McDonagh this year, Offaly and Antrim. And they knew at the end of that game, they're probably going to be playing each other in the final come down the line. So that was a real mouth-watering clash. And like, I can't wait to see them clash again, because I do genuinely think that they will. And then on the other hand, Carlow, to be expected, picking up a good win there, putting up 430 against me. That was very impressive. They have the likes of Marty Kavanagh And then I think it's Nolan up front. So they really, really do have some good hurlers there, Carlo. And, that they were competing in Division 1 there a few years ago. So they'll be keen to get back to that level soon.
Yeah, and Marty Kavanagh with 1-8 there at Park Talgin, so a very significant win there for Meath. And Paul Sheehan with 14 points for Down away to Kerry, so definitely a lot of progression there. We'll run through some of the football results, and we'd Fermanagh 2-10, Tyrone 2-17, Tyrone getting the victory in the end. I suppose, it was close enough in the first half. Fermanagh were certainly given a much better display to what people expected. Tyrone were maybe struggling a bit in the first half, but I think they hit 1-8 without reply at the start of the second half. Very, very comfortable in the end. And Fermanagh's 2 late goals probably making the scoreline a little bit more respectable. But for Tyrone, in the end, the All-Ireland champions get the victory and march on in Ulster.
Yeah, I think they'll be happy enough with how it went, except for the ending, which I'm sure we'll talk about with Conor McKenna getting sent off. But I thought their performance looked really good. And the standout for this is just how good, for me anyway, the standout for this is just how good their midfield pairing is now. Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick, like they're right up there. They're probably, you could argue, the best midfield pairing in the country. I mean, I know that Matthew Uran, rightfully so, I think Matthew Uran is the most complete midfielder in the country right now. But like in terms of his form, obviously, Brian Fenton is the most gifted player, but in terms of what his performance levels have been, Ruan's been fantastic. But if you're talking a pairing, I think Kilpatrick and Kennedy is a really good shout for the best pairing in the country. Very interestingly, the whole rotation of Kilpatrick in a full forward, and then he was back out in midfield, and Brian Kennedy was in a full forward, and the two of them were claiming marks. They were setting up chances for the likes of Dara Canavan and Darren McCurry, who are buzzing around them. So showing that they're not just going to put Cathal McShane in there as a target man. Sometimes it will be one of the big midfielders. I thought that they were very impressive. Darren McCurry, Dara Canavan in particular, scored some lovely points. Niall Sludden got a lovely one as well. And Kieran McGeary looked better than he did in the league, because, his performances in the league were pretty poor, which is worrying because of how important he was to Tyrone last season. But no, and then Conor Myler as well, the goal that he got in the first half, which came at a crucial time because Fermanagh were 7-5 up when Myler got the goal. So Tyrone got a bit of a test, probably more of a test than they thought they would. But yeah, they passed it with flying colours, in my opinion. And I think Logan and Dewar, I think they'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, we've seen how well Tyrone have done when they have Kilpatrick and Kennedy in that midfield. Like, I think I've seen a statistic where they've only won one of their last 8 games or something like that when either one of those two haven't been playing and they've used someone else in the midfield. So for Tyrone, like they're doing very, very well when they do have that midfield. And I think you've seen the work that was obviously that or the work we seen them do obviously last year in terms of winning that All-Ireland. You were mentioning there about Conor McKenna's red card. What was your opinions on it?
Oh, I thought it was very harsh. I mean, can you name one teammate in the country? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming you played the GAA yourself. Like, if your teammate is there getting, 3 lads on him, what teammate in the country is not going to run over and help their teammate out? And the thing is, McKenna didn't run over and hit him a dig. He didn't run over and box him. Like, he ran over and pushed him onto the ground. And at that point, like Colin O'Rourke was trying to make the point in the commentary that, in the analysis that, well, he picked him up and threw him on the ground. Yeah, because he knows that the Fermanagh lads are immediately going to turn around, and which they did, and piled onto him, tore his jersey off him. About 4 of them on him immediately. I mean, I think Kilpatrick, it's hard to know. Like, I did see him swing up his arm when he was on the ground. I don't know if one of the Fermanagh lads kind of stood over him, said something to him, to then he reacted. But it was very obvious that James McMahon put his hand in Kilpatrick's face when he was on the ground and kind of pushed on him. That's a huge disrespect, obviously. Of course, Kilpatrick's going to bite on that. And then McKenna did what any teammate would do in the country. And to have him singled out as if he was the only player that got involved in that. I mean, I think probably the reason he was picked was because, I don't know, third man in, even though, there were multiple people in already. But McKenna going in was what made it from a little incident into a brawl. But of course, there's not one teammate in the country who's not going to back up their teammate when he's getting 4 men standing over him like that. So I think it's way too harsh. I think Tyrone should appeal it. And yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion on it? Like, because this thing seems to happen at the end of pretty much every GAA game now. Like it's really, really crept in. I know it's always been part of the game, but I feel like it's getting more and more common.
Yeah, I thought it was a yellow. I definitely wouldn't have given a straight red, because he obviously pushed one of the players and then sort of picked another one up and threw him on the ground as well. Would have given a yellow, but definitely wouldn't have given a straight red. And I think he'd already gotten a yellow at that point, so he probably would have been sent off, I suppose you'd have to say. But obviously with a straight red, it means he's suspended with 2 yellows. I don't think he would have been suspended then. So I think they will appeal, and I think he should definitely be available for the next one. But it is one of them again as well, where because originally I thought he gave McKenna a second yellow, and I said, oh, well, that's fair enough. But when he gives him a straight red, it kind of doesn't really make sense why he gave him a straight red, but not McMahon or Conal Jones, I think it was as well, or maybe Ryan Jones, one of the Joneses anyway. Obviously, 2 of them got yellows as well.
Number 9, the big fella.
Yeah. So it was a little bit. It was a little bit unusual.
The big guy
Might have been, yeah. So it was a little bit unusual, to be honest. That and referees seem to do this quite a lot, where I don't know. I feel like they seem to bottle a lot of these decisions, where they'll give a red here, or give a yellow here, yellow. No real consistency really at all.
Oh no, it's a raffle. Like it genuinely is. It's like who's gonna go, and like the thing is, like if by the letter of the law, if you're gonna send off McKenna, you should send off James McMahon as well. And like that's why I'm kind of surprised, because refs in the past have seemed to have this thing of one player per team, right? Like when a scuffle breaks out, and that's why when Tyrone got 4 players sent off, everyone was so shocked. But at the same time, all 4 of them deserve to be sent off. Like absolutely all 4 of them deserve to be sent off, because they all, were caught striking another opponent, which is the rules. Like why is it crept in kind of as an unwritten rule that like you don't send off players and they're all in a brawl? Anyone who strikes, if you want to play the rules, should go. So I don't know how it's crept in that like players can just get away with stuff. Then on the other hand, the player that is just helping his teammate out. Obviously, I mean, he went in there aggressively, but find me a player who's not going to do that at the intercounty level, especially in like an Ulster Championship where there is a rivalry between the 2 counties. It's obviously going to happen. I think Tyrone will definitely appeal the decision, and I think it would be a big loss to them if they do lose McKenna, because he was showing some serious energy. He looked, quick. He looked sharp, and then he hit that shot for the goal, which hit the post and came up with finished into the back of the net there. I think it was by Rafferty, and then he was kicking in some nice points as well. So if he's gone, that's actually a big loss for Tyrone. So I do think they will appeal his suspension, and in my opinion, the suspension should be turned over.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah, like I definitely think they will. They will certainly look into it. I think Fergal Logan and Brian Dooher, one of them are solicitors anyway, so I'm sure they'll definitely get down to work in regards to that. But yeah, like, and I suppose as well, like he's seen even with McKenna and his shirt getting dragged off him. I don't even know if that's why the referee gave him a red, because he's seen him with his top off and he thought, oh well, he must have been getting into some bother somewhere, and that's why he kind of just chose why he singled him out. I don't really know. Like it was a strange one really, because I definitely think like McMahon, what he done was arguably worse. So it was a bit odd, all right.
Mm-hmm. Well, the antagonism, it's just gone to a new level. I mean, like, I'm actually interested in your opinion on this, because I hate it. Like I absolutely hate it. The fact that the likes of David Clifford and the likes of, say, Sean O'Shea, that they know that every game that they're going into, they're just going to get someone who's on them, just mouthing in their ear all game, trying to rile them up, trying to get them to hit them, trying to get them sent off. The fact that that's just become such an accepted part of the game, I don't understand it. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, like I'm all down for a bit of banter, a bit of crack or whatever. I suppose it depends what people are saying to each other, obviously. No, I think there is a line. Like I don't think you should be bringing in people's girlfriends or family members or anything like that, or races, religions, anything like that. I think there is a clear line. I think you can have a bit of banter between 2 people, a bit of jokes back and forth. There's no harm in rivalry whatsoever in sport, and we've all been there before. Even with people, like you might be best mates with someone you're marking, and you'll have a bit of laugh, you'll have a bit of crack with them. But I think there is a line where you shouldn't go too far, you shouldn't go too over the top. There's definitely certain things you shouldn't say, and I do think as well, like. I don't know, like I feel like the fighting at the end of a game for me is something that never really makes sense. Like I feel like at the start of a game, if you want to lay down the law, lay down a bit of a marker, fair enough. But towards the end of the game, when it's all dead and buried, like, I don't really know. Like, there's an old expression my dad always used to say, actually, funny enough. He was like, if you don't win the match, maybe you can win the fight. And maybe that's what the Fermanagh lads were thinking of there.
Maybe, yeah. No, like, maybe it's just trying to make a statement that, like, you know, you might have won, but you're not going to push us around. You're not going to bully us. And yeah, maybe they were just trying to leave one on a few Tyrone lads there. Who knows?
Yeah, and I suppose to finish up on Fermanagh, then they'll be going obviously into the Tailteann Cup. What do you think of them going into the Tailteann Cup? I mean, there's not really much between a lot of those Division 3, Division 4 teams. And look, although they were beaten in the end by 7 points, I think they'll definitely take a bit of confidence going into that. And with players like Sean Quigley, Kieran Corrigan, they'll definitely fancy their chances.
Yeah, they were better than I thought they were. Like, I have to say, I mean, like, having seen how they started the Division 3 campaign with Antrim coming up to Brewster Park and absolutely dominating them, they didn't look like they were in the same league as Antrim. I was genuinely worried for Kieran Donnelly and for, you know, Fermanagh. But they've got better and better, and they look very good at the start against Tyrone. Obviously, getting 5 points to 2 ahead. Lovely scores by Ryan Lyons early. He looked very impressive. Conal Jones got a nice one. Sean Quigley got a nice one. So, look, the fact as well that they were without the likes of Owen Donnelly, Ulton Cowan, Shay Cullen. Like, those are 3 fantastic players, and they were missing them. So obviously Owen Donnelly has retired, but if they can get the other 2 back in, you know, they'll be actually looking, in my opinion, dark horses for the Tailteann Cup. I mean, personally, I think it could be a Cavan that win the Tailteann Cup. I think Westmeath had the talent to do it as well, but yeah, no, I would be genuinely looking at Fermanagh as serious dark horses to win the Tailteann Cup this year.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to bet on it, all right, because it's going to be very close indeed between a lot of the different counties that are going to be involved. You had New York 15 points, Sligo 116. I mean, this game was a lot closer than people thought, and I actually think New York were the better team for the vast majority of this one, and on another day could have won this one. I mean, they were level going into the final couple of minutes. Sligo pulled away with the final four points in the game, but New York will take a lot of credit in the end from this performance.
Yeah, obviously similar to London as well. No championship game since before the pandemic, and you know, I mean, the likes of Adrian Varley, 6 points. I mean, he looked fantastic. Johnny Glynn at midfield as well looked pretty impressive. Mark Ellis too, like a former Cork hurler. I mean, then I've been back. It was Daniel O'Sullivan. He looked really, really good. I mean, his pace on the counter attack was very impressive. Yeah, like Sligo. On the other hand, though, they'll still be happy. I mean, they went to New York. They got a serious test. And they passed it. I mean, Sean Carabine with 1-3, Noel Murphy with 5 points, Paddy O'Connor with 3 points. I mean, the Sean Carabine goal as well was brilliant. I mean, he showed us pace and a lovely finish. I think the league definitely helped Sligo because when it came down to the home stretch and when it came down to the crunch time of the game, they were able to get over the line. Pat Spillane coming off the bench, I thought that really helped. I mean, his running power was very evident there. And, you know, they got some crucial scores. Obviously, you mentioned the 4 points in a row. That's what saw them over the line. But I think New York would be absolutely delighted with the performance. I thought they looked really, really good. Interesting enough, I did like the commentary between Darren Frehel and Pat Spillane. I thought Pat Spillane's a funny kind of co-commentator because, I mean, he's your typical man on the sideline, isn't he? That, you know, oh, great score there, great point there, great point there. Talking over Darren Frehel. I mean, I liked it. It had a real live stream type feel to it.
Yeah, it was good, all right. I mean, it felt like he was out of breath a lot of the time, and you were kind of wondering, is he going for a jog or was he out on the points the night before or something? I'm not sure, like, because he definitely did seem, you know, and he was kind of, he was belching out at so much that was going on, but it was kind of entertaining, to be fair to him. But yeah,
he's a character, yeah.
He's a little unusual at times, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't hold back. He's like a Munster version of Joe Brolly, I'd say. Not as controversial, but sometimes he doesn't hold back. And if he sees a good point, he says it's a good point, regardless of whether the commentator is talking or not. But no, I thought Frehel went well with him because Frehel wasn't too uptight about it. Wasn't too like, stop talking, I'm doing the commentary here. I thought he kind of let it be a 2-man act rather than a commentator and then a co-commentator. I thought the two of them were in it together type thing. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. I thought New York played like a side with nothing to lose. And going into the Tailteann Cup, I mean, me and Matt were having the conversation saying, like, if they get a Waterford or if they get a Carlow, I mean, let's remember Sligo put 28 points on Carlow. Like, I'd actually back New York to have a serious chance against Carlow. And then Waterford as well, who, finished rock bottom of the league campaign without a victory. Like, you wouldn't actually put it past New York to turn one of those teams over.
Yeah, no, I think New York are going to get their first ever inter-county win at senior level this year. I really do. Haven't seen them play, and with Adrian Varley as well, who looked very impressive. But yeah, last thing on the Pat Spillane thing as well. Obviously, it was funny enough seeing Pat Spillane Jr. coming on as well, and he hit a point as well. I remember at one stage, and Darren Frehel didn't acknowledge it, and I seen Pat Spillane, and he was like, "Was that Pat?" And he was kind of just saying it in the background, and he kind of wanted him to have his moment. I was hoping that Frehel would acknowledge that it was him that scored, but obviously he just wasn't have seen it. But that was definitely a funny moment. All right. Last but not least, then you had London 2-11, Leitrim 3-12. Close one as well. I think a lot of people expected it to be close. Leitrim just about getting over the line in the end.
Yeah, big chance missed for London. Like, big chance missed for London, I think. Like, you have a side that are coming over that you've beaten them in the league when they had a better team on paper out that day than they did this time. I mean, they had Keith Byrne there last time, who is their scorer-in-chief. This time they didn't have him, and then Leitrim were coming to London this time as opposed to London going to Leitrim. So I thought, look, this could be a serious chance. And me and Matt actually tipped London to win this game. We thought, like, the momentum is there. This is their championship final. They've been waiting for a championship game for so long. And now they have Leitrim, the worst team in Connacht, with no disrespect to Leitrim. I mean, Sligo look pretty good. You've got Roscommon, Galway and Mayo then, who are like, miles ahead of them, of the other two. So I thought, like, look, this is lined up for London to potentially take Leitrim out here and make national news. I mean, because if London had won this game, the news stories would have been everywhere about it, about what another feather in the cap that would have been for Michael Maher and for the London boys. I thought they looked really good in stages. I mean, the two goals towards the end there from McMahon and from Sean Hickey, that really had Leitrim on the edge of their seats. And only when Ryan O'Rourke got the goal at the end, that's the only time that I really was like, all right, Leitrim are going to win this. But right up until that point, I genuinely thought maybe when Donald Rinn got the second goal, that maybe Leitrim might see it home. But the two quick goals from London, like, that brought Leitrim right back. And then O'Rourke's goal finally finished it off, I suppose.
Yeah, like we've seen this time and time again with London. Like, they seem to be one of these teams that seems to be down and out, and then they seem to come back and fire back out of nowhere. Like, and I suppose they're another team going into a Tailteann Cup that could definitely spring a couple of surprises. Like, I definitely don't think they'll be a million miles away from it. Like, I think you would look at a lot of other sides that should get the better of them, but at the same time, at home, like, they haven't been beaten. Like, when you look at through all the results, other than a 9-point defeat to Sligo, London have been competitive in every game that they've played, which I think is testament really to Michael Maher and his management team.
100%, because they've been competitive with Cavan and Tipperary, like two sides that were very recently provincial champions. So I think absolutely, like, London, same thing as I'm saying with New York. Like, if London get a Waterford or a Carlow, like, they'd be licking their lips at the chance of having a go at the two of those sides, because the two of them, morale will be low in that camp. And I'm saying this in a way of respect to London and New York. I was saying with Matt, like, London and New York have nothing to lose. Like, if they lose, no one like, the fact that what I'll show that will prove this is Leitrim went away to London, a side that had beaten them in the league. Forget that it's London. They went away to a side that had beaten them in the league, and they went there without their best forward, their top scorer, their key player, their talisman, and they won by 4 points. And it didn't really make national news. But if London had won that game, it would have made national news. And that's my point when I'm saying that London don't really have anything to lose. And it's the exact same with New York. But when they come up against a Waterford or a Carlow, if they turn one of them over, like, that's a massive news. Like, that's a massive day for Gaelic football in those two areas. And yeah, same thing with New York. I think if London get a Waterford or a Carlow, or if they get New York themselves, I think, they'll be eyeing up though as a potential victory.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, and you see it even with Andy Moran as well, like, hugging his right-hand man I've seen an image of that going around social media, and obviously you can see how much it means there. Like, and they knew it was a very, very tough game, and it was a big, big win to come out with. You've got Mayo and Galway this weekend, and provided Mayo were to get past Galway, I mean, you could have Andy Moran going up against his former county. Which, look, I think everyone and everyone's dog on the street knows that whoever comes through Mayo and Galway should beat Leitrim and get into that kind of final. But the idea of Andy Moran going up against either a Mayo or even against a Galway, who are, you know, one of his big rivals, you know, as a player, I mean, that will be a bit of a story in that, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, of course, because obviously Andy, like, you cut him and he bleeds green and red. So if he had to be managing against Mayo, I think it would be an interesting spectacle. But I think it wouldn't be as much of an interesting spectacle on the pitch. I think Leitrim are in for a bad day, whether they play Mayo or Galway. Obviously then, like, if they pull off the shock of all shocks and beat one of them, I just still don't think they'd beat Roscommon in the final, providing Roscommon get by Sligo.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree as well. And I suppose if Andy Moran's Leitrim ever came up against Roscommon, maybe that would even be an even more of an interesting clash. I suppose before we finish up, Seamus, obviously your own podcast, Play On GAA. Where can people find that if they're looking to see a bit more of yourself, and obviously your friend Luke, who does be on the show with yourself as well?
Yeah, so it's just called Play On GAA. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, and we're coming to Spotify very soon. I was saying I was head deep in the assignments, so you know, I was flat out with them, but I am nearly finished. I have one left, and once that's over, we'll be on Spotify very, very soon. So just literally Play On GAA. Myself and Luke kind of both run the channel. Obviously, Luke took the match of views this weekend while I was doing the assignments. So thanks a million, Aaron. Again, been a pleasure again having me on. And enjoyed the discussion.
Perfect, Seamus, top man. Cheers for